Check out FlipsideGaming.com for all your gaming needs. Use the promo code HEROES to save 10% on all orders over $10 and support the channel at the same time. Hey there, this is John from Heroes and Legends. Welcome to Day 3 of official Core Set 2019 previews. As always, we're going to recap and analyze all the cards that have been previewed over the last 24 hours. Quickly before we get started though with today's cards, if you were looking for a way to help support the channel, just check out the description below. You'll find a few ways. Our Patreon page is linked down below. You're also going to find links to products on Amazon. If you make any purchases on Amazon, once you go through that link, and it really can be anything, we'll get a small percentage for the channel. Finally, Flipside Gaming still offering a promo code for our viewers. Hopefully you can save some cash while you support us. And as always, thank you not only to the folks that look at those links, but to all the viewers. Y'all make the channel what it is, and let's get into today's cards. This first one, Invoke the Divine, probably looks pretty familiar to you because it was in Dominaria. Now, we haven't got an official preview of this card. However, it did creep into a Dominaria booster pack like a lot of the cards that we've seen over the last few weeks did. So, yeah, it's going to be in the set. Not a lot to say about it. I mean, you kind of know what it does. It's there for the limited game to let you deal with artifacts or enchantments or gain a little life against an aggro deck, perhaps. More of a sideboard card than anything, typically. Now, this next one we've actually talked about in a previous video. It's Sigil's Sword of Valeron, and it was part of the Spellslinger's intro a few weeks ago, so we did a video then and discussed the card. But finally, we get a good look at it. Wizards officially previewed it today. It's going to be good for you in Limited, just generally, I think. Sealed and draft decks would like to have something like this a lot of the time. A Johnny's Welcome. I love that picture. Look, he's waving at you. Welcome, come on in. It costs 1 white. It's an enchantment, uncommon. Whenever a creature enters the battlefield under your control, you gain 1 life. Here's what I like about this card. It's just really cheap. It's not a huge commitment by any means. Do I play this just out of the blue in a draft or sealed deck? Probably not. Like, I'd sideboard this in maybe against an aggressive build. I might just rather have another card that's more offensive in my deck as opposed to just having this to have it. However, we know there's synergies where this will make sense. If I have some token creation, wonderful. I'll probably run this card. If I'm playing the black-white deck that has some life gain synergies, yeah, I'll probably run this card. Does it see play outside of Limited? Probably not. The only thing I would say is down the road, maybe post-rotation, if we ever get to the point where there is a token deck that's really viable, maybe it's a sideboard card against aggressive matchups. Lina, Selfless Champion. 2 white and 4, legendary creature, human knight, rare 3/3. When this enters the battlefield, create a 1/1 white soldier creature token for each non-token creature you control. Sacrifice this. Creatures you control with power less than Lina's power gain indestructible until end of turn. We'll talk about Limited first with this one. I think this is a good card. I can see myself first picking it in a lot of packs and draft. I feel like for 6 mana, you're usually going to get some economy out of this card. Even if you don't have any other creatures in play, it's not great then, but you're still getting 4/4 power and toughness on the battlefield because, of course, you'll get 1 token since this will count itself. Other than that, though, if you have 2 creatures, 3 creatures, 4 creatures, all of a sudden you start to feel the value there. Now, it's not going to happen all the time, but the moments that it does, it's going to be great for you. Also, don't discount that sacrifice ability. There are times that that will be relevant. Aside from all that, a few moments ago we saw Johnys Welcome, which is going to play fantastic with this card. I'm sure there's going to be more synergies you can find in the set as well. And it is a knight for you commander players out there looking for ways to add more knights to your knight tribal. That could be really relevant. As far as standard goes, though, I don't think that this card is going to do much there, even if a Knight Tribal deck could take off. And I think one will take off, maybe even in this meta, and we're going to look at a card in a moment that makes me believe that. The problem with this one, though, maybe it sees play in a Knight Tribal deck that's a white-black mid-range deck or something like that, as a 1-of or 2-of. But I think for 6 mana, it is asking a lot, and it is a little dependent on board state for its power level. Although I will say this is a good way to protect some of your creatures from a board sweep, whether that's you playing the sweep or an opponent. It would have been interesting if it created Knight tokens, but I suppose they didn't want to do like the traditional 2/2 Vigilance Knight tokens here. It might be a little too powerful then for the casting cost. They'd have to up the cost of the card. Valiant Knight. Now here's the card I was alluding to a moment ago. A white and 3, human knight, rare 3/4. Other knights you control get +1/+1. 2 white and 3, knights you control gain double strike until end of turn. Alright, this card is no joke. First, in Standard, we've been seeing the black-white mid-range decks, at least some versions of them, start to adopt more and more of the knights. You have knights from Dominaria, you have History of Benalia, which is fantastic. I could see with the inclusion of this card, maybe more people starting to go a little more knight heavy to the point where maybe I would start to consider that deck a knight tribal deck. I guess we'll see how it goes, but I do think it's very possible. Forecasting cost, it starts to border on a little heavy, but at the same time, you're getting a 3/4 body. This is not a fragile creature. So combine that with the fact that this is going to be a lord for your other knights, and it also has that double strike ability. And that ability also gives this card double strike. So its knights you control gain double strike, which is going to include the Valiant Knight. And it's not legendary, so you can play these multiples, and yes, they don't buff themselves, but they will buff each other. So 2 of these in play, now each one is a 4/5. This just sounds better and better the more I talk about it, as a matter of fact. In Limited, this is a great card. Even if I have no other knights in my deck, I'm still playing this. For the 3/4 body that can give itself double strike, that's just good enough for me. I'm happy with that. If I have more knights, wonderful. And again, I just mentioned, but casual players looking for more knights, this is a key one. Fantastic Lord card for your decks. Okay, this next card comes to us from a Japanese language preview. Translations can always be a little touch and go with these, so hopefully this is pretty close. Departed Deckhand. This is an uncommon, a blue and 1, Spirit Pirate 2/2. When this becomes the target of a spell, sacrifice it. Departed Deckhand can only be blocked by spirits. Pay a blue and 3. Target creature you control can only be blocked by spirits this turn. Okay, so there's a lot to unpack here. First off, it only costs 2. There's a drawback here. Of course, it can be destroyed, basically, or you have to sacrifice it if it becomes a target of a spell. So you can't put an aura on it, for example, or use a combat trick. You can equip it, though. The opponent, in Limited especially, if they're playing targeted spells, they're probably removal spells. But if they do play something that targets that's not a removal spell, like a combat trick or something, they can use that to make you sacrifice your creature. So that is a problem. Although, at least if this translation's right, it is spell and not ability that creates the sacrifice effect. So that's good. It gives it at least a little bit more sturdiness than some cards we've seen in the past. Now, the fact that it can only be blocked by spirits means it's virtually unblockable. Not going to always be unblockable, but many times it will be. And that ability, turning one of your other creatures into an unblockable creature, basically, could be really good to get past some board stalls. Like I said, you can't always count on that, obviously. Someone else could have the same card in their deck or something like that. But many, many times, you're going to be able to sneak damage across. And if you use that blue and 3, because it doesn't tap the creature, if you have enough mana, you can put that on a couple creatures. That could even be game ending, just get you past that board stall. Pretty awesome. I do think it's a little too fragile for what it's trying to do in the world of Standard or anything like that. Casual play, though, it is a Spirit and a Pirate for tribal decks, if nothing else. One with the Machine, a blue and 3 sorcery rare. Draw cards equal to the highest converted mana cost among artifacts you control. This one doesn't feel great to me. Here's the problem. For me, forecasting cost, sorcery speed depended on me having an artifact in play. And it has to really be sizable, too, because you don't want like a 1 converted mana cost artifact and just replace this card for 4. That's pretty horrible. You want like at least 3, 4 converted mana cost. And if you don't have that, this card is just not good. It might be a dead card, as a matter of fact. I don't like taking that kind of risk. Do I play it in Limited? If I have a ton of artifacts, I might do it. And if I'm in Azorius colors, I might be running that artifact theme, and perhaps I make this part of my deck. Perhaps. But I think most of the time I don't touch this for all the similar reasons. You're not going to play this in Standard. Maybe some casual or commander decks that are running big artifact creatures or something might appreciate this. Other than that, I don't think it sees a lot of play. Psy Master Thopterist, and of course the Thopter token they showed us next to it. This costs a blue and 2, legendary creature, human artificer, rare 1/4. Whenever you cast an artifact spell, create a 1/1 colorless Thopter artifact creature token with flying, pay a blue and 1, sacrifice 2 artifacts, draw a card. Now, for limited purposes, I think this is a fine card. 3 casting cost, 1/4. As long as you have some artifacts in your deck, you're going to get a little bit of a boost with those 1/1 Thopters. Little 1/1 flyers can be really annoying. If you have a lot of artifacts, this card will be great for you. If you have a handful, it's still going to be okay. And later on, you might be able to sacrifice those for card draw if you're in a situation where you need to work through your deck quicker, maybe hit that removal spell or something. I might not first pick this in a draft or something like that, but it could be a relatively high pick for me, and maybe then I could go into Azorius, try to get some artifacts too. Now, aside from that, what about Standard? It's got a slight chance. I mean, there was Thopter decks floating around many months ago. Some of them were pretty decent. Could a card like this revitalize those in Standard? Maybe. A lot's changed since then, though. A lot more cards are in the format. The format's a lot faster, a lot more streamlined. So it's going to be a challenge, but I won't completely count it out yet. After rotation, the problem is you lose all the Kaladesh cards, and then I think this card doesn't have as much of a chance to really make it into Standard unless they give us something else. Casually, you'll have a lot of fun with this if you're an Artifact Thopter fan, for example. Supreme Phantom. A blue and 1. Spirit. Rare. 1/3 flying. Other spirits you control get +1/+1. I'll tell you, they're all about the Tribal Lords in this set, and I'm all for that. I think that's fantastic. Now, this card's a little weird in some ways because it doesn't feel like there's a ton of spirits in the set. There's a few of them. That's probably why this is a rare as opposed to some of the uncommon ones. However, there are a few. Maybe in draft you pick them up. Could find some value there. And even if you don't, a 1/3 for 2 with flying, there are worse things you could get stuck playing. It's probably not your preference, of course, but it's not the end of the world either. It's a nice little blocker. It can put some damage across in the air early on. So it's okay. Nothing crazy on its own, but much better, obviously, with other spirits. This is exciting, though, for maybe modern players that would like to throw this into a Bant Spirit deck, or just casual players that want to throw this in their Commander Spirit deck, or just a Kitchen Table Bant Spirit deck. So this is a pretty cool inclusion here. Down the road, is this a foreshadow to maybe some more spirits coming later on in the year? That would be cool. I guess we'll just wait and see. Fel Spectre. Black and 3, Spectre. Uncommon, 1/3 flying. When this enters the battlefield, target opponent discards a card. Whenever an opponent discards a card, that player loses 2 life. We've seen a number of cards over the last few weeks that enter the battlefield, force an opponent to discard a card. I mean, there's already cards in the format too, like Duress and stuff. So it gets kind of interesting that they're tying some loss of life in with that type of ability. Now, is it good enough if 4 mana is a 1/3 flyer? In Limited, it's okay, but I'm only going to play it probably if I have a lot of discard effects in my deck. And Black does have some, so it could happen, especially in a draft. Maybe more so there than Sealed. 1/3 flyers aren't bad little blockers and stuff sometimes too, so there are moments I might side it in if I'm not running it, but I don't know if I'm always going to run this card necessarily. I do like it a lot, though, in the right build. Standard, I think it's a little too slow, and again, situational. Because your opponent, even though it doesn't always work out to their advantage, but something like this, they can just try to dump their hand to avoid the life loss. And remember, you have cards like Hezeret out there. These red decks are trying to dump their hand anyway, so yeah, it feels a little awkward in this current environment right now. Next card comes to us from a German language preview. It's Graveyard Marshal, 3/2, 2 black. It's a rare. Creature, Zombie Soldier. Pay a black and 2. Exile a creature card from your graveyard. Create a tap 2/2 black zombie creature token. This is all about value when it comes to draft and sealed. You know you're going to lose creatures. If you're playing Magic, unless you're really, 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 really good, you're probably going to have creatures go to your graveyard. Now, if that's the case, guess what? This is going to let you take those creatures and turn them into a resource for a black and 2. It's a little slow. They come into play tapped, sure. This can be a little fragile as a 3/2, but it only costs 2. It is 2 on color, which means maybe it's not always a 2-drop. But even if it's coming in on turn 3, I'm okay with that. You get a little boost with a 3/2. But that ability is really what's interesting to me, especially if the game goes long. Big fan of the card. I would first pick this in a lot of packs, I think. Would we see a zombie deck in Standard? We do have the Death Baron reprint from a few days back. So I guess anything's possible, but I think it would be more likely after rotation. Casually, though, if you're a zombie fan, this will be awesome for you. Stitcher's Supplier. A black. Creature zombie. 1/1. Uncommon. When this enters the battlefield or dies, put the top 3 cards from your library into your graveyard. Okay, so it's a Mill Yourself card. In Limited, be careful though, because if this comes in and dies, you're milling yourself 6. That's quite a bit for a 40-card deck. Just be mindful. But I will do this if I have good reason to do it. If I have enough graveyard shenanigans, and there's some reanimation perhaps going on. We also saw the Bone Dragon yesterday. That's a card that would play well with this, for example. So there are reasons to do it. If you don't have those reasons, of course, just don't play this card, right? Outside of Limited, is there a Standard deck trying to do something like this? I don't think yet. Maybe post-rotation. I do think reanimation could be a thing down the road. I just don't know if it's going to be strong enough quite yet in such a really solid and formed Standard meta. Finally, I'll just say for you Madrotha fans out there, this might be a good card to add into your deck. Demanding Dragon. 2 red and 3. This is a dragon rare 5/5 flying. When this enters the battlefield, it deals 5 damage to target opponent unless that player sacrifices a creature. Typically, I'm not always a huge fan of these cards that give the opponent the decision. However, in this case, I'm on board because this is a 5/5 flyer for 5. That decision is just extra on top, actually. Because if they sack a creature, take 5 damage, well, wonderful. No matter what, you have a 5/5 flyer for just 5 mana. Well worth it. In Limited, this is a bomb. First pickable in Draft. Play this, you'll love it. It's going to be fantastic for you. In Standard, I think it does see Standard play. It probably doesn't knock Glorybringer out of the format, though, right now. I think you might have to wait till after rotation. But once rotation occurs, yes, this card will see play, I have no doubt. It will maybe be a replacement for Glorybringer in some builds. And it is a dragon, too, so for casual play, it's just another option for dragon decks. Goblin Trashmaster. 2 red and 2. It's a Goblin Warrior, rare 3/3. Other goblins you control get +1/+1. There's a Lord. Sacrifice a goblin, destroy target artifact. Okay, so it's a forecasting cost 3/3 Lord. It's good if you got goblins. Is it good if you don't in Limited? Yeah, it's okay. A 3/3 for 4 is fine. And the fact that I can sacrifice this to destroy an artifact might be very relevant within this environment where it does feel like, especially Azorius, is really pushing the artifacts. Now, if I don't play this in the main deck for some reason, bring it in if you have to deal with an artifact, because it can sack itself, of course. If you have other goblins, well, of course, this gets a lot better, becomes more playable. Probably a better draft card than Sealed, like many of the cards we've been seeing today. Can this get there in Standard? I don't think right now. I mean, you can cast a Rekindling Phoenix for this price, right? That's the problem right now with red cards. Goblin Chainwhirler, Phoenix, you got Chandra, you got Glorybringer. Like, really, you're going to try to go in a whole different direction with goblins right now? Maybe post-rotation, perhaps. Not right now, though, I don't think. Also, though, if you are a casual fan of goblins, this will be great. If you're a casual fan of warriors, I'm looking at you, Najila fans. This is also a warrior. This one comes to us from a Portuguese language preview. It's Disdainful Pyromancer. A red and 1 human wizard 2/2. This one's a rare. Pay a red, tap, discard a card, and you get to draw a card. Pay a red and 2, tap, sacrifice Disdainful Pyromancer. It will deal 4 damage to target creature. Okay, so they are all about bears with upside nowadays, and this is a fantastic one for Limited. First pickable, no doubt, in Draft. This is a phenomenal early drop that comes down as a 2/2. Keeps your board presence tight, does everything you need a 2/2 for 2 to do, but then by the next turn you have these options. At the very least, it sits on the battlefield and telegraphs the fact that it can take out a 4 toughness creature. That might slow down your opponent if nothing else. I don't know about Standard. I think it might be a little too fragile and a little too slow for the Standard environment currently, but like I said, I'm okay with that because I'm really looking forward to playing this in some Limited games. Here's a Planeswalker. This is Sarkhan Fireblood. 2 red, 1. Legendary Planeswalker Sarkhan. This is a mythic, 3 loyalty. +1. You may discard a card if you do draw a card. +1. Add 2 mana in any combination of colors. Spend this mana only to cast dragon spells. -7. Create 4 5/5 red dragon creature tokens with flying. Okay, this one's a little odd. Maybe it shouldn't be too surprising because Sarkhan Planeswalkers are always a little odd, a little different. This one definitely is that. Now, here's what I like about it. 3 casting costs, 3 loyalty. I like cheap Planeswalkers. There's some value there. The first +1 is great. I love to rummage. Red loves to rummage. Nothing wrong with that. The second +1 is weird to me because it's only good if you're trying to play dragons. Other than that, it's not doing anything other than boosting loyalty. The -7 is good, but it's going to take you a while to get there. And this card only starts with 3, and it doesn't have a way to protect itself. That feels a little difficult. I feel like if I got there, I would have won the game anyway at that point. I'm so defensive that I'm probably in a fine state. So, do you play this in Standard? I don't think you do right now. Could there be a dragon deck down the road in Standard? Maybe. Maybe it's a Rakdos deck that's also splashing some multicolored dragons and trying to reanimate them, and this could be like a backup plan, something along those lines, to perhaps cast them in a long game. I'm really stretching, as you can tell. That's possible post-rotation, maybe, but it is a long shot. Currently we have Glorybringer, which is in the format, but I don't think I'm playing this at 3 to just get to Glorybringer a little bit quicker, right? Like, again, Chainwhirler costs 3, so it's just kind of hard to justify something like this at this point. What about Limited? Yeah, you know what? I play it there, because all the problems I mentioned, they're not as bad in Limited. 3 casting costs, 3 loyalty. Let's say I rummage once or twice with this thing and it absorbs some damage for me. For 3 mana, that was probably worth it, and I'm going to be happy with this card. Probably still first pick it, as a matter of fact. It could be that good just because it's a Planeswalker. And if you're a Commander fan and you have a Dragon deck, yeah, you'll want to try this out, no doubt. Spitflame. This actually plays well with Sarkhan, as a matter of fact. A red and 2 instant rare. It deals 4 damage to target creature. Whenever a dragon enters the battlefield under your control, you may pay red. If you do, return Spit Flame from your graveyard to your hand. Okay, instant speed, removal spell. I like it so far. Costs 3 for 4 damage. That's good. But it only hits a creature. That's going to be a problem in Standard right now. You have Lightning Strike. You have Shock. You have Wizard's Lightning. I just don't think this fits, quite honestly. I think you rather go to the face in those style of decks. And I do see some of the mono red decks gravitating a little more, just a little more towards burn. And maybe with some other cards in the future and post-rotation, they might go completely over into a more dedicated burn style deck. But this isn't going to be a part of that, unfortunately. Post-rotation, I mean, could it break into a sideboard of a deck at some point? Yeah, probably. It has a chance anyway, being at instant speed. But really, there's so many key cards right now in red, like I've been saying throughout the video. In limited, though, this is great for you. You're going to play this there. It's removal. It's first pickable. Even if you don't have any dragons in your deck, it's still fine. It's still a solid card, even if you never recur it. Instant speed is going to take out a lot of important threats. You'll be happy to have it. And finally, of course, this is another card you might want to toss into your Dragon Tribal Kitchen Table deck because you will be able to recur this a number of times there. This next card is a Chinese Simplified Language preview, loosely translated Green Seeker Dryad. This is an uncommon green and 1 Dryad 1/3. Tap, look at the top card of your library. If it is a land card, you may reveal it and put that card into your hands. Wow, okay, that's actually pretty decent. If this translation is correct, this is a very strong uncommon, as a matter of fact. I kind of wonder if it is land or basic land. I guess we'll see once we get the official translation. But if it's land, even better, I'll take it. So the reason I love this card so much is just because, imagine you're playing limited first. You put this card down on turn 2. It's a 1/3. Nice little blocker against some small aggressive creatures first off. At the end of your opponent's turn, you tap, you look at the top card. If it's a land, you just draw that card, and then you draw for your turn. That's kind of crazy. Spoiler alert, when you play Magic, a lot of times the card will be a land. Not always, but a lot of times. So eventually, if your opponent doesn't deal with this, you're going to just bury them in card advantage is what's going to happen. So they have to deal with this. What do? They burn a removal spell on this 2-drop? Yikes, that's not great for them either, but really they have no choice. If they don't, you just win the game unless you're really far behind or something. This is really, really good in limited. I would think about first picking this probably in a lot of packs when I see it show up, as a matter of fact. This is a strong uncommon. What about standard? Could it get there? Power level, I think it could. Where does it see play? I'm not 100% sure right now. I feel like the Stompy decks might not want to be slowed down by this, but I don't know. I'd at least want to test it there. But I think down the road, if not right away, there are going to be decks that will be happy to have this. Again, the power level is just too good to pass up, I think. And even in casual decks, commander decks, this will be a nice utility card just to help you burn through your lands and get your stuff and not miss your land drop. This one comes to us from a Spanish language preview. It's Runic Armasaur. 2 green and 1 dinosaur. This one's a rare 2/5. Whenever an opponent activates an ability of a creature or land, if it isn't a mana ability, you may draw a card. Limited, this is great. 2/5, it's a little more defensive than we're used to seeing recently from green, but that's okay. For 3 mana, I'm fine. Sometimes we'll put damage across, but I'm more here for this ability. I'm trying to paint my opponent into a corner where I'm hopefully pushing them hard enough that they're going to have to react, and by reacting, I might be able to draw a card or two at some point. And that's where this card's really going to shine. For 3 mana, I think it's worth that. It's not always going to be incredible, because if you're behind, your opponent's just going to simply slow down their play and not create situations where you're allowed to draw cards as often. And if that's the case, then they still win the game, maybe a turn later or something, right? It's still in their hands, kind of, and that's a problem. And again, it's not an offensive creature, it's more defensive. Because of those reasons, it's going to have a problem in Standard, I think. Green creatures right now, I think, want to be very aggressive. For 3 mana, you can play a Steel Leaf Champion, for example, even though that is 3 in color, of course. But still, 3 versus 3 in a green deck, yeah, I'm going with a Steel Leaf Champion, right? So I don't really see it there in this current environment, but it's an interesting card. And again, another problem in Standard simply is your opponent has some control over that ability, and that might just not be good enough some of the time. Casually, dinosaur fans, here's another one for you. Heroic Reinforcements. This is a white, a red, and 2 sorcery uncommon. Create 2 1/1 white soldier creature tokens until end of turn. Creatures you control get +1/+1 and gain haste. This is a sorcery speed card, so you can't really use it as a combat trick. This is about going offensive, and Boros colors want to go wide, so it makes sense, of course. You're going to have a bunch of little tokens, maybe some small creatures. hopefully a few things with evasion. You go ahead and play this, try to close out the game. If you're all in on that strategy, this will be a good card for you in Limited. If you're not, then you're probably not going to run something like this. And it doesn't really do a whole lot outside of Limited. It's just too expensive. And even if there was a standard deck looking to go wide, I don't think this is going to truly be a part of it. Poison Tip Archer. Green, black, 2, Elf Archer. Uncommon 2/3 with reach, death touch. Whenever another creature dies, each opponent loses 1 life. I really like this card. It obviously is meant to be kind of one of those limited cards that is going to be good in the Golgari colors within that set. But I feel like this one does have potential outside of that, because we have the Saprolings from Dominaria, and I do think that might actually be a legitimate build. Maybe not now, but perhaps post-rotation when things get watered down a little bit. And when that's the case, this might actually be really good in a build like that. I'd at least want to try it out for sure. What about Commander, where you're maybe making a lot of tokens and have sack outlets? This does hit all opponents. So that's actually kind of awesome. I'd try it out there too. Limited, going to be great there. If you're starting down these colors and someone passes you this, you're going to be really happy. I don't know if I always first pick it necessarily, because I don't like to lock myself in with early gold cards a lot of the time. But I do feel like this one's strong enough that I at least consider it, depending on what else is in the pack. Reach, death touch, and that ability is going to be great and Limited. Regal Bloodlord, black, white, 3, 2/4, uncommon, vampire soldier flying. At the beginning of each end step, if you gain a life this turn, create a 1/1 black bat creature token with flying. This one feels more of a limited card to me than anything, unless maybe I'm playing some casual vampire decks or something like that. Now, it's a little more expensive at 5, but you are getting a 2/4 flyer and the potential to get some 1/1 flyers. It's actually pretty good. If you're in these colors, there's a lot of life gain potential. If you have that in your build, then I would say definitely go for this. Even if you don't, it's still a good flyer for 5, quite honestly, most of the time. In sealed, even if I don't have a lot of synergies, I'm probably still playing this if I'm in these colors. This is another one that I might feel a little weird about first picking, being a gold card, but if I see it past me when I'm going down this path, yeah, I'll be happy. Skyrider Patrol. Blue, green, 2, Elf Scout. This is an uncommon 2/3 flying. At the beginning of combat on your turn, you may pay Simic colors. If you do, put a +1/+1 counter on another target creature you control. That creature gains flying until end of turn. Fantastic limited card to deal with board stalls. Like when you're just stuck and you can't get that damage across, play this for 4. Next turn, attack in, pay the 2 mana. Something else gets a permanent +1/+1 counter. Flies till end of turn. Get across that damage, hopefully close out the game. That's what this is all about. Doesn't do a whole lot probably outside of Limited. It is an elf though, worth pointing out. But in Limited, I'll be happy to play this one. Arcadis the Strategist. He's using strategery in that picture there. I see it. Blue, white, green, 1. Elder Dragon, legendary creature, mythic rare, 3/5, flying vigilance. Whenever a creature with Defender enters the battlefield under your control, draw a card. Each creature you control with Defender assigns combat damage equal to its toughness rather than its power and can attack as though it didn't have Defender. Wow. Okay. So this is a commander card, first and foremost, but it's a really fun commander card. Break out your Defender creatures, your walls, everybody, because now you have a reason to play them. And this could be quite good, I think. Make this your commander. Forecasting cost, very reasonable. 3/5 body, flying vigilance. Throw out those Defender creatures, draw cards. And there's some powerful ones. I mean, think of Wall of Denial, Fog Bank. There's probably tons you can think of once you start going through all the cards over the years that had Defender. Probably some really interesting interactions here. And you could have a fun deck on your hands. I kind of want to build this the more I talk about it. This is similar to Doran, of course, but the potential to draw cards makes this option very appealing. Outside of Commander, do I do anything with this card? Well, I mean, in Limited, I'd probably run it if I can swing those colors as a 3/5 flying vigilance, even if I don't have any defenders. It's not a bad creature at all in the air, and could at times be just good enough on its own. And if there are any defenders that are relevant, then wonderful. I guess we'll see once more the set gets spoiled. Standard, probably not there, unfortunately. But you never know what the future holds. Maybe a bunch of defenders are coming in the Ravnica block. I guess we'll wait and see. But at least for right now, I don't really see it. But awesome, awesome card here. Casual fans, Commander fans, you're going to love this one. Chaos Wand. 3 casting cost artifact. Rare. 4, tap. Target opponent exiles cards from the top of their library until they exile an instant or sorcery card. You may cast that card without paying its mana cost. Then put the exiled cards that weren't cast this way on the bottom of that library in a random order. Okay, I got 2 words for you. Paradox engine, right? Okay, imagine that. That would be insane. Now, in Standard, I don't think that's super realistic. You have a lot of artifact hate out there, and this is a little expensive. It costs 3 to cast, 4 to activate. Don't really think that's realistic in a competitive Standard deck, but it would be a lot of fun to try, wouldn't it? And who knows? Until you try to brew it, you never know. So, something to think about. What about casual play? Now, you could do that in casual decks, definitely. Commander, it could be a lot of fun, actually. And even if you just play fair with this in Commander, there's going to be a lot of good targets in people's decks for this. You might play some powerful instants and sorceries, perhaps. Might be worth playing just for that. Limited, I would still play it. I don't know if I first pick it necessarily, but your opponent's going to have removal spells in their deck, and those are going to be instants and sorceries typically. So if you hit one of those, and that's all you do with this card, it might be worth the 3 to cast and 4 to activate, quite honestly, because that could be a big swing. If you steal their removal spell and use it against them, that could change the landscape of the game for sure. Now you might hit some other things that aren't as good, or a combat trick or something like that. But still, I think it's worth the risk. It is high variance, but I do think this card eventually pays off. Suspicious Bookcase. This costs 2. It's an artifact creature wall. Uncommon 0/4. It has Defender. Pay 3. Tap. Target creature can't be blocked this turn. Of course, this will interact with the card we talked about a few moments ago. That's kind of cool. But ultimately, what I like about these 0/4 walls for 2 that we find in these sets recently is they gum up the ground, they slow everything down a little bit, they let you build out your strategy. And in this case, if you're in a board stall, you can tap this, pay the 3, target creature can't be blocked, so it hopefully will let you push across some damage, maybe get past that stall and have the upper hand. I actually like this a lot for limited. I don't think it does much outside of there, but definitely a card I'd be happy to play. I love that art too, it's awesome. Here's a reprint that's actually not an expensive one. You can find this for under $1, but it's interesting anyway. Phylactery Lich. Here's what's odd about it in this set, though. Blue and white are the Artifact Matters colors. This is a 3 black spell, right? So it doesn't feel like it fits. Not to say you can't pull it off in limited sometimes, right? But it just feels a little bit odd. Now, the problem with this card is you need to have an artifact, and you need to keep that artifact in play for this to be good, or for it to really do anything. Now, if you do a 5/5 indestructible zombie, there's nothing wrong with that. That can actually be pretty powerful on the battlefield. But if your opponent can get rid of the artifact, or you can't get an artifact in play, this gets really awkward really quick. So especially considering now it costs 3 on color, I don't know if I play this all the time, honestly. If you feel like you have enough targets in the way of artifacts, then yeah, go for it. Standard, no, I don't see it there. It's just too difficult to make it work. Banefire. Here's another reprint that's not super expensive. It's like a $1, $2 card. It's been reprinted a few times now, but the last time it was in Standard was Conflux. That was a long time ago. And this is a powerful card. Will this see Standard play? Yes, absolutely it will. I mentioned earlier some of the red builds are starting to lean more into the burn, and this is a good incentive to do that. This can put away a game. It can deal with a control matchup pretty well, especially later in the game when you have the mana to pull it off. It can deal with a problematic creature on the fly. It's not an instant, but who cares? It's just strong enough. It's even splashable, which is great. It's only 1 red in X. This will be amazing for all the reasons I just mentioned in Standard, just even more so in the limited environment. Enigma Drake. Back already from Amonkhet. It's not going to be leaving Standard, I guess. So this is a reprint, of course. If you played this in limited in Amonkhet, you kind of know that sometimes it's difficult to really feel like you're getting your money's worth here. Even though the casting cost is only 3, the power being dependent on instants and sorceries in your graveyard makes this highly dependent on the other cards you draw and play. Now, it's in the right colors for that, though, and I have had moments where I felt like it's worth my time because I could get this thing up to maybe a 4/4 before the end of the game, or even a 5/4, but that is rare. Usually you're sitting on a 0/4 or 1/4 or maybe a 2/4, and even so, is that bad value? No, for 3 mana, it's not bad value. I'm happy to play this, actually, pretty much all the time if I'm in these colors, but I don't necessarily pick it or value it very high, but it can do work for you, definitely. Obviously, the more instants and sorceries you have in your deck, the better it will be. Alright, with that being said, those are the cards for today. Now, we're going to be back tomorrow recapping everything that we see over the next 24 hours, but until then, hey, thanks for watching. Please remember to like and subscribe, and have a great day. Hey, thanks for watching. This video is made possible by the generous support of viewers like you on Patreon. Check out the description below for links to our Patreon page as well as our Amazon affiliate store, where a small percentage of all sales will also help support the channel. Finally, if you haven't had a chance yet to subscribe, hit that subscribe button so you don't miss any new videos on Heroes and Legends. Talk to you again soon, and have a great day.